name's Adam Levitan of EstablishTheRun.com, as always, joined by Michael Leone of EstablishTheRun.com. I found out recently that Buffalo people claim to be Toronto Blue Jays fans now that they're in the World Series. Leone, how's it going today?
Convenient. I will say the Buffalo Bisons are the minor league affiliate for the Blue Jays. So there's a link there, closest in proximity. Adam can doesn't even have enough fingers to count how many times he's seen me wear Blue Jays gear on shows.
On today's show, we are going to discuss some sneaky starts for this week. There are 6 teams on a bye this week. This is the biggest bye week that we've had this NFL season so far. And of course, there's been a litany of injuries this season. So people are going to be thin out there when they're making start sit decisions, Leone. And I know for some of my teams, I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel as well. And so we're going to go over 6 guys today that we think have matchup worthy winning upside to start this week. Let's get right into it here with number 6 on our list. It's going to be J.K. Dobbins. So I know that Dallas's rush defense showed up last week against Corey Krosky-Merritt. I'm not ready to say they are a good run defense, especially now that they have to face this really good offensive line of the Broncos. The bad things that I can say about Dobbins is that he's going to lose a little bit of base work, a little bit to RJ Harvey, and he's going to lose some pass down work, most likely to either Tyler Bidet or Jaleel McLaughlin. But in outcomes where they can get 15, 20 just straight carries and goal line work for J.K. Dobbins, you can see a real ceiling here. Leone, how are we go? Are we going too far on matchup here, though, for J.K. Dobbins?
I don't think so. I mean, especially for these backs that are going to rely on efficiency, high yards per carry, you're going to need touchdowns out of them. This is the spot you want to play him in a game that has the highest game total on the week. It's the only game with a game total over 50. The Dallas defense, as you mentioned, showed up last week, but in terms of our predictive DVP measure at ETR, we have them as the third most favorable matchup for opposing running backs. And Harvey in week 4, I think it was, started to make a dent, and we were like a little concerned the rookie was taking over, and it's been straight Dobbins since then. You know, 3 straight weeks with a rush share over 60%. That now puts him with a rush share over 60%, 6 out of the 7 weeks. So clear lead back here for a Denver team. Good matchup, good team total, projected to be ahead. So really like the spot for Dobbins.
Indeed, one of the best spots you can find for Dobbins. So even though I do have some concerns about these other guys mixing in, like if you have J.K. Dobbins, this is the week to start him. Let's go to number 5. It is Darnell Mooney. It was a brutal August and September for Darnell Mooney. Missed pretty much all of training camp due to a hamstring issue. Comes back and plays poorly in his first 2 games back, then gets banged up again. But now he gets this matchup against Miami, seemingly healthy, and no Ray McLeod too, which you're like, well, that doesn't really matter. Ray McLeod was earning a decent amount of targets for this Falcons team. And so you move Ray McLeod, you have Darnell Mooney in here in one of the best possible matchups against Miami. He could even be on waivers in some people's league, I think. Leone, and I'd be willing to like pick him up and start him if you really were desperate. What do you think about Moondog here against the Dolphins?
Yeah, I like Mooney here. It's a Dolphins team that's just struggling all around right now. And in the 3 games that Mooney was able to run a full complement of routes, he's averaging a 19% target share over those 3 games. Liable to run, upwards of 90% of the team's routes. And this Miami team, we have them a little bit blitz heavy, a little bit man heavy. And those 2 things, add to some volatility and some variance. And that's kind of what you want for Darnell Mooney, someone who can get down the field and make really big plays. So I think it's a little high risk, high reward start, but the ceiling is definitely there for him this week.
Do you buy this stuff, Leone? I know this is a little bit off topic, but do you buy this stuff that Drake London is just so much worse when Darnell Mooney plays? And it hasn't really been in target share as much as just been in like results. And that's why I kind of think it's been a little bit fluky. But I will say that in games Mooney has played, we haven't seen the same type of London ceiling. Do you think there's any signal there or just all noise?
I think the signal is in the volume a little bit. I mean, the 1 game Mooney didn't play, we had a 50% target share for London. The game he left early, we had a 39% target share. The first game of the season, 36% target share. So those are three massive games. The other three games, London's been at 19%, 19%, 26%. So it's for sure been tempered. They'll spread the ball around a little bit more, but I think the results have been, more extreme. You split up anything into a small sample, you can get these things. So I
Yeah.
think, our volume expectations are certainly lower for London, but on a per target basis, there's no reason to expect him to be worse with Mooney in there. If anything, you'd think he would be better because you've got Mooney stretching the field, maybe taking away some of the attention of the defense. So
Yeah.
still a very clear wide receiver one start in all formats.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, I forgot to acknowledge the chat when we got started here. Appreciate the chat. See everybody putting their questions in. Appreciate it. We'll get to as many of those as we can here shortly. Let's go to our number 4 player here for sneaky starts this week. It is Harold Fannin. So, not sure if David Njoku is going to play in this game or not. They're calling David Njoku day to day. If David Njoku is out, I don't think it's crazy to think that Harold Fannin can lead this team in targets. And like last week, Harold Fannin was on his way to a big game with David Njoku out. They just didn't need to throw it all. They were just throttling the Dolphins. That's not going to happen at New England. In fact, I think they're going to get behind pretty big, and we're going to see a lot of garbage time and dropbacks here for Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel has this outrageous tight end target rate. So if you were really desperate, I think you could start Fannin if Njoku is in. But if Njoku is out, I think Fannin's a really, really interesting start. Leone, thoughts on Fannin here?
Yeah, they will throw the ball too if they get behind with Gabriel. I think it was just 2 weeks ago they had a 50 pass attempt game. As you correctly noted last week, was just kind of between the weather and the lead they built on Miami. Miami not able to do anything offensively. The pass volume came way down. But the route share for Fannin when Njoku got banged up a couple weeks ago was up to 76%. Hadn't been higher than 63% before that. With Njoku fully out last week, it was at 83%. So him and Jerry Jeudy are definitely going to be the primary targets. And Fannin's been the much more efficient player thus far this year. Not like a crazy high yards per route run, but pretty clearly the best on this team that struggled throwing the ball. Extremely productive player in college. These are kind of the rookies that you want to bet on, where they've been pretty solid and now they're getting a role expansion.
Okay. I see a lot of people asking questions about a player that is our number 3 player. So why don't you grab that Microsoft Copilot up there, Leone, and we will get to our number 3 player before we get to the chats. Our number 3 player is Tez Johnson, wide receiver for the Bucks. Chris Godwin's going to be out. Mike Evans is going to be out. Emeka Egbuka has been dealing with this hamstring injury. I think he's going to be okay, but maybe not 100%. Meanwhile, you have Baker Mayfield playing at this really high level and elevating the wide receivers around him. I don't typically get excited for like 145, 150 pound wide receivers, but this is the situation, and it's a really good one for Tez Johnson, who I know had plenty of fans coming out of Oregon. So, Leone, anything to add here on the spot for Tez Johnson against the Saints?
Yeah, well, if we ask our co-pilot here to look at the New Orleans Saints defense, what we see in terms of their deep pass defense, they're allowing 8 intended air yards per attempt, passer rating of 105, 18 explosive plays defined as 20 plus yard plays, and even 5 40 plus yard pass plays. So this is a team that, is decent overall. But if you look at the above average air yards per attempt and some of these explosive plays, you can get really down the field shots that give you a high ceiling. And that's what you get with Tez Johnson, right? He's a very explosive player. And the concerns about his size really are, is that going to take him off the field? And they're so desperate right now that it's not going to take him off the field, at least in the short term. He's been running routes at a really encouraging rate in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah. So, I know there's a lot of questions about Tez versus other guys. We'll try to get to those, but certainly if you're desperate, Tez Johnson can just be started right away in this situation. And longer term, I think Chris Godwin's going to be back, but I wouldn't swear that he's ever going to come back to be himself. And Mike Evans at this point is likely done for the rest of the fantasy regular season. All right, let's get to some chats here. Leone. So right away, Mountain Explorer says Tez Johnson or Troy Franklin. He says, I don't know if Wilson is playing. I'm not sure which Wilson he
Oh,
is.
Garrett, probably.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Garrett is out. Almost certainly Garrett Wilson's going to be out here for this game. So Tez Johnson or Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin was on the by Leone model this week, which I was actually just working on some context around. He still is running fewer routes than, he's in that rotation with the rest of the Broncos guys. So I'm never that comfortable with Troy Franklin. I know the matchup is really good. My gut says Tez here over Troy Franklin, Leone, but what do you think?
I think it's Tez because it's a good matchup for him as well. And I think the role, as crazy as it sounds, is actually a little bit more assured. I mentioned him running, strong routes back-to-back weeks, 84% and 74%. They just have to get him out on the field, and he's an explosive player. So I prefer Tez, but we do have, double-digit PPR point projections on both these players with Franklin playing in that expected shootout against Dallas. But yeah, I'd take a little bit more role security. Denver, as you mentioned, always very volatile in terms of where the routes and targets are going to go.
EJSX13 says, I'm starting Dak, Lamb, Sutton, Aubrey, and Broncos defense this week. Wish me luck. Well, that wasn't a question, but shout out to you, EJS. That's what we call in the DFS world a game stack there. And I'm sure there will be plenty of Broncos, Cowboys game stacks this week in the DFS streets. Sonny at Milton says, I'm desperate. Should I start Tez Johnson? It depends who else you have, but we've talked about Tez Johnson a bunch here already. Hopefully, you have a good idea of what we expect there. Jandro42 says Woody Marks or Kamani Vidal. Um, I know that Kamani Vidal is going to be the feature back. I don't know that Woody Marks is going to be the feature back. I'd like to say I know on Woody Marks, but I don't know for sure. So I think this will be Vidal for me. Leone, any thoughts on Vidal versus Marks this week?
Yeah, Vidal also on the running back version of the Leone model, which is just kind of looking at players who have underperformed their opportunity and historically players that moving forward will outperform what they've done recently. So, like Vidal a bit tonight, definitely think you have to take the role security that he has over the promise of Woody Marks.
Yeah, and I mean Hassan Haskins isn't even playing tonight. So like not that I thought that was a big threat, but even he is out tonight. Bright Beetle says, should I start Garrett Wilson over Stephon Diggs? Well, I have good news for you, Bright Beetle. You don't have a decision there because Garrett Wilson is almost certainly going to miss. William York says Dak Prescott or Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones this week. Man, Daniel Jones is operating one of the most efficient and highest scoring offenses we've seen in a very long time in the NFL. I mean, it's pretty crazy. But Dak has a very difficult matchup here against the Broncos. What do you think about this one? Danny Dimes or Dak?
Man, it's tough. I feel like Dak just seems to find a way to get there in fantasy no matter what. With that said, we do have Dimes projected for about 1 point more. I mentioned it's a really high total in Denver, Dallas, but Denver is favored in that game, leaving Dallas with more of a mid-tier team total themselves of 23 and a half. The Colts, on the other hand, 30.5, highest team total on the slate. And a lot of times, it's going to be boring, but when we have a touchdown discrepancy between two quarterbacks, we're almost always going to go with the quarterback with the higher team total because so much of their day, honestly, is just going to come down to whether they throw touchdowns or not. So I'm going to go with Danny Dimes. And I know that we have him higher. That's with like an absurd amount of rushing touchdowns projected for the Colts in this matchup. We still have Dimes higher just because that team total is so strong.
All right, let's go to Adrian says Jalen Knoll or Kendrick Bourne. I know I'm cooked. Never say you're cooked, Adrian, especially when you're talking about volatile wide receiver play. And Nico Collins probably not going to play in this game for the Texans off the concussion on a short week. And Christian Kirk, I don't know, is going to play either. Now, Braxton Berrios did play more than I would have liked to see, but I still think it's a pretty good spot against the 49ers. Very young defense for Jalen Knowles, who is an exciting player. Kendrick Bourne on the other side, Ricky Pearsall probably out again. And so Kendrick Bourne is going to have a role. Leone, this is an interesting one. What do you think? We have Mr. Jalen Knoll or Mr. Kendrick Bourne?
Yeah, we have them projected really, really close. Keep an eye on those Houston injuries. I'm tempted to go with Noel, where there's a little bit more uncertainty in terms of the role. The upside could be better there for him, whereas Bourne might be, his value might be dwindling a little bit Jennings looked better last game, his highest target per route run of the season. You've got George Kittle back. They were able to run the ball a bit more efficiently. So I know Bourne had some of those really high ceiling games, but I think the uncertainty this week favors Noel as long as Kirk and Nico remain out for Houston.
All right. Let's get back to our list here of sneaky starts with matchup winning upside. We have two spots left to be claimed on our list. Well, number two on our list, no one's going to like Leone. They're going to flame us. However, it is Tyrod Taylor or Justin Fields, whoever ends up starting for the Jets. I understand this is really low floor. When you play the Bengals, though, guys just have these huge floor ceiling combos. This defense is terrible, and Joe Flacco is going to create situations for you where you can have success offensively because he's going to turn the ball over. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to lengthen the game by dropping back a ton as well. So I know no one wants to hear it, but if you were desperate at quarterback here this week, I think you can get a decent amount of rushing yards out of whoever starts, Tyrod Taylor or Justin Fields. And once you get 50, 60 rushing yards for a quarterback, he doesn't have to do that much with his arm to be fine for you. So I understand it's thin. I understand nobody wants to do it, but this is a pretty good spot to play a Jets quarterback. I think, Leone, how dead are the Jets?
Yeah, I mean, I like the matchup. Garrett Wilson being out's tough just because they really don't have a ton in terms of skill players. I think Mason Taylor maybe even missed practice as well, so
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on that one. But yeah, we do have Cincinnati inflating opposing QB points. And for the Jets in particular, I think it's a good matchup where they have this pass blocking issue they've had all season long. A lot of teams have a really high pressure rate against the Jets, higher than their seasonal baseline. But we do have Cincinnati as kind of lowering sack rate for opposing offenses, kind of allowing these shorter throws, not blitzing at a super high rate. And I think this is something, especially if Tyrod Taylor gets in there, where he might be a little bit more patient, kind of take those underneath throws and be able to sustain some more drives out of the Jets offense than we've seen recently.
Okay. That leads us to our number one sneaky start of the week. People are going to say it's not that sneaky, and they're probably right, but it is. Cortland Sutton, the only Broncos wide receiver that is going to be out there for every route or close to every route. Matchup against Dallas is incredible for J.K. Dobbins. It's also incredible for the wide receivers here. And so even with Trayvon Diggs possibly coming back, it's like they have been just getting killed by wide receivers all season. And so you can make a case for Troy Franklin, as we mentioned. I know some people were asking about Marvin Mims. Cortland Sutton, to me, though, is the absolute no-brainer one. Leone, any more thoughts on Broncos wideout here?
Yeah, we have Dallas allowing the most fantasy points adjusted for, opponent schedule strength to the wide receiver position of any team in the league. And we did hit on the volatility of the Denver wide receivers, but Sutton's the one guy who's a little bit immune to that. Had kind of a weird route share week 2. Other than that, though, he's like 80 to 95% routes like clockwork week in and week out. Definitely the most talented wide receiver here and the biggest touchdown threat for Bo Nix.
All right. We got maybe 10 more minutes here. We can get to as many chats as we can from the people. Bleed Dodger Blue. Oh,
Oh
this is
no.
a fellow
Oh
MV
no.
fellow baseball laundry bro is in the chat. He says Darnell Mooney or Moore. I assume he means DJ Moore here. It has been real quiet for DJ Moore this season. Seems like he is not one of Ben Johnson's favorite guys. He's also been banged up with hip and some other weird stuff. He was in the hospital. So it's not clean right now for DJ Moore. But what do you think about this one? Darnell Mooney or DJ Moore?
We have them really close right now in terms of projection. So if I'm going with the gut on this one, it's going to be Mooney. I think there's just a little bit better case for a ceiling performance out of him for some of the reasons that we discussed, earlier in the show.
King Kareem 7 says, someone offered me Javonte Williams and Dalton Kincaid for AJ Brown and Bo Nix. Should I take the trade? It's hard to know on these without seeing your whole team because I don't know how strong your quarterback situation is. Generally, if you're in a one quarterback league, I don't love trading for quarterbacks. Like you can stream. There's just always tons of options at the quarterback position. That said, AJ Brown's probably the best player in this trade, although Javonte Williams certainly has a case. Do you have a lean on this one? Leone, Javonte, and Kincaid for AJ Brown and Bo Nix.
Yeah, our trade calculator has this dead even. I think it would just come down to your team strength, honestly. It
Yeah.
just really it's close enough in value that I would just go to whatever's going to cover your weaknesses the most. Take that side.
Burning pin. One thing I will say about AJ Brown is like Eagles have shown a willingness to throw it. And I mean, Saquon has nowhere to run whatsoever. And this is like, those are obviously really good developments for AJ Brown. Um, Burning Panda says, is the deadline for Aaron Jones 4 p.m. today to activate him? So Aaron Jones has been activated for this game. He is going to play. We have a bit more um, injury docs on Aaron Jones than usual. He's a very fantasy friendly player. If you had Aaron Jones in a season long league tonight, Leone, would you be interested in starting Aaron Jones?
Probably not. We have him for just under 8 half PPR points on the week. We've got Jordan Mason there for just under 11, so still expecting that to swing Jordan Mason's way. Kind of already seemed like it might have gone that way before Aaron Jones got hurt. And a little concerned playing not 100% Aaron Jones because really where he's making his fantasy value right now is like down the field targets in the passing game, and you kind of
Yeah.
need a little bit more explosiveness as opposed to, sometimes these backs can come into a big workload and be totally fine, but we're not going to see that. Mason's going to be your goal line back. So I'd probably wait another week before, seeing what to do with Aaron Jones.
Frank says a league mate is offering me Bam Knight and a mid-round pick next year for Rico Dowdle. Should I do it? Um, Trey Benson should be back in like 2, 3 weeks, I think. I do think Bam Knight's ahead of Michael Carter. I think they prefer Bam Knight to Michael Carter. Rico Dowdle, he has earned, I think, a series by series approach with Chuba Hubbard, and I think they're going to stick with that for the foreseeable future. So I don't think there's a lot of value really here with any of these. For me, it would be more like how much do you value the mid-round pick next year, or if you need help this year, Rico Dowdle, I think, is probably going to be better long term than Bam. So yeah, interesting one there, Leone. Any thoughts on Bam and a mid-rounder for
Yeah, I don't
Rico?
know if this is a keeper league or a dynasty league. If it's a dynasty league, I'll just say our trade calculator has Rico as worth more than a third round pick next year. Just kind of would rather bet on the upside there.
Yeah. Grad Alb says Derrick Henry this week or J.K. Dobbins. Man, I know we said J.K. Dobbins was a sneaky start. I'm not benching Derrick Henry. Like with the way the Ravens coming out of this bye at 1-5 with Lamar hopefully coming back, they could score a ton of touchdowns here against the Bears. And this is a really good spot for Derrick Henry too. So yeah, I think pretty easily Derrick Henry there. Kelp says, who do I bench? Tez, Sutton, or T. Higgins? So you get into these spots where you pick someone up off waivers and you're like, man, should I start him off over some guys that I know are really good at football? That's not really the way that I like to play. I would probably go Sutton and Higgins and bench Tez here. But Leonie, what do you think? Tez, Sutton, or Higgins got to bench one?
It's Tez. I think Higgins with Flacco there, still high touchdown upside for him. Clear number two, talented wide receiver. Sutton's the number one target for a team in the highest game total of the slate. So, yeah, as much as I think Tez is a good sneaky start, you're not taking him over players that were drafted in the third through fifth rounds in fantasy that really haven't had a huge ding to their value. Higgins with some ding, obviously, with Burrow getting hurt, but recouping that value now with Flacco showing a bit more than Browning did.
Tyler Yost says Jordan Addison or Michael Pittman. So to me, this all comes down to will Josh Downs play? I mean, I thought Michael Pittman was an awesome play last week because Josh Downs was out. Josh Downs this week, I believe, already returned to practice. So if he ends up starting, I think this would probably be Addison for me. I understand you need to make the decision before you know for sure on Downs, though. But yeah, what do you think, Leone Addison or Pittman?
Yeah, it's really close. If it's a full PPR league, I still might go Pittman, who's consistently going to run a ton of routes, be the top target or second top target for Danny Dimes, been utilized a good bit in the red zone area. So I think I prefer Pittman a little bit there. Addison, of course, has a bit more big play upside than Pittman does, but yeah, I'm going to go with Pittman.
Sketchy Craig says Tez Johnson or Marvin Mims. So now we're in the range where I'm like, yeah, I think I'd rather go Tez because Mims, I understand he has big playability. He's going to be rotating with Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant and all these other guys that rotate for Denver. Tez is going to be out there every snap. So I think Tez over Marvin Mims pretty easily there. Kelp says, what do you think about Quentin Johnston tonight? Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time with these three wide receivers, you know. Um, Keenan, I think, has like one of the better roles. I think Ladd's the best player, but I think Quentin Johnson has improved so much and he sees a bunch of really valuable targets also. And now we have to throw Gadsden into the mix as well. So, Leonie, do you have a favorite Charger tonight or any QJ thoughts?
Yeah, it's really tough. Was kicking myself for not playing Gadsden in DFS last week, but it was hard to see it coming with QJ coming back. They were definitely making an effort to play Gadsden more, especially with a performance like last week, which just muddies the water a little bit. And uh, on some of these shows earlier in the season, we talked about the insane pass rate for the Chargers. They're throw heavy still, but it's come back down to like more normal throw heavy. So it's going to be really tough week to week. You're going to see weeks like last week where it's Gadsden and Keenan Allen. You're going to see weeks where it's QJ and Ladd. But I still do generally like QJ as the big play kind of threat in this offense who's still getting a target share that's like close enough to Ladd and Keenan that makes him pretty valuable to like be close in targets and be the one guy that's more of a downfield threat. You can see that in the yards per target numbers for the three wide receivers.
All right, time for a couple more here. Try to get to some people that we have not hit yet. Working Man 101 says Jordan Addison tonight or Cortland Sutton. I don't think I can sit Sutton in this matchup, man. And I think Jordan Addison's a better player. I think Jordan Addison's a really, really good player. So I hate saying anything bad about him, but I think it's probably Sutton for me. What do you think, Leone?
Yeah, I'll go Sutton here as well. Both are good starts, but I prefer Sutton.
Dallin BC says, let me know about this trade. I give Jamar Chase, Baker, and Bucky for Bijan, Dak, and maybe Sutton. My God, man, why don't you just trade your full team with this guy? Jamar Chase, Baker, and Bucky for Bijan,
It's a
Dak, and
huge
Sutton.
trade. We have it pretty close, slightly preferring the Dak side. I think part of it comes down to like how badly do you need to win this week that you can.
Well, yeah. And Bucky has a bye next week too. So I mean,
Yeah.
if you trade for Bucky, you're not going to have him this week or next week. So you should definitely consider that. Chaparral 900 says need to start a wide receiver too and flex in standard scoring league. Pittman, McConkey, Flowers, and Vidal. So standard scoring basically just means touchdowns only. Pittman, McConkey, Flowers, and Vidal. I do think Flowers, like assuming Lamar comes back, um, is in a pretty good spot here. I like him. I like McConkey too. It would probably be Flowers and McConkey for me. But yeah, Leonie, what do you think?
Our projections have Flowers as the best of the receivers for the standard scoring, which makes sense. You know, he's more of an efficiency play. But we have the running back that's can get loaded up with a ton of touches. We have as kind of the clear projection lead of this group.
Okay. Last one here for today. Shutdown Same says Kimani Vidal tonight, or Bill. Of course, he's referring to Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Bill Krosky-Merritt, who underperformed massively against Dallas last week, or Vidal tonight. Leone, what do you think about that one?
I think it's Vidal. He's had back-to-back weeks with 10% target shares. JCM hasn't done that a single time this year, and a little bit worried about the rushing efficiency after they were stymied by a bad Dallas defense. You've got Jaden Daniels out again. It's a tough matchup against KC, so I do prefer the Vidal side of that.
Appreciate everyone who submitted questions here today. If we didn't get to yours, apologize, but we will get to as many as we can next week. Again, if you need more help, if you're very serious about this stuff, you can check out establishedrun.com. Before we get out of here, we shall recap our list of sneaky starts for this week, starting with the top, Cortland Sutton in a dream matchup against Dallas. Cortland Sutton is the only Broncos wide receiver that actually runs a route on almost every Bo Nix drop back. Everybody else is rotating. Sneaky start number two, whoever starts at quarterback for the Jets. Um, I would prefer it to be Tyrod Taylor, who I think will be more settled, but this is an awesome matchup against Cincy. I understand no Garrett Wilson, but if you were desperate at quarterback, you can certainly get a rushing floor from one of these two guys in this matchup against the Bengals. Sneaky start number three, Tez Johnson. No Chris Godwin, no Mike Evans. Baker Mayfield has been a wide receiver talent elevator in a big, big way. We could see Tez Johnson play every snap here against the Saints in the Dome in week 8. Harold Fannin, we'll see on David Njoku's status, but either way, this tight end target rate for Dylan Gabriel is massively high, and I think they'll be trailing here and trailing big at Foxborough. Good spot to get a lot of Dylan Gabriel backup, dropbacks. The Moondog, Darnell Mooney, finally appears healthy and in a really good spot, home dome against the Dolphins. And then lastly, J.K. Dobbins, sharing time with R.J. Harvey to some degree, losing a little bit of passing stuff to Bede or McLaughlin, but J.K. Dobbins the one most likely to get the rushing touchdowns here this week in what should be a very high scoring game between Dallas and Denver from the Mile High City. All right. That's going to do it for a week 8 edition of the Bleacher Report Fantasy Football Show. Appreciate everybody hanging out as always. For Leone, for everyone behind the scenes at Bleacher Report, and everyone behind the scenes at ETR, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.